Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 5 glitch in the matrix and supernatural stories for you. One of which is probably the longest single story I've ever narrated. So put on your seatbelt, you're in for a wild ride. Let's start with something eerie. It's those eyes. Inhuman. Case file number 2367, written by One of Those Nights, 2. The 1800s called, and he answered. My friend's mom was driving me home. My friend was also in the car. It was past midnight on Tuesday in February. We live in a super small town that is technically called a village. Needless to say, there is basically no nightlife. My friend and I were in the back while her mom was in the driver's seat, leaving the passenger seat empty. We had started the downward slope of a hill when the bright shone on a man. He was walking in the middle of the road. She slowed down, expecting him to move to the side of the road. He could not have been in any less of a hurry. He seemed to have complete confidence in us slowing down. At this point, we had reached almost a standstill, and we could finally see him clearly. He had on shorts with suspenders, a huge overcoat, and boots that went up to his knees, and a top hat. He looked like he was from the 1800s. It got deadly silent. As we got even closer, I could start to make out his face. He was pale, but not abnormally so. And either he was amazing at makeup, or he had something red smeared across his mouth. He peered through the passenger side window, and I have never ever seen eyes like his before. He made direct eye contact, and had a slight smile on his face, and he appeared to be reaching for the door handle. I could only describe his expression as taunting. Looking into his eyes was a feeling I'll never ever forget. At some point, my friend's mom came back to life and slammed on the gas. We later called the police station to see if anyone had seen anything that night, but nothing had been reported. Honestly, I think we may have seen a demon, because I don't think any human can have eyes like he did. I sometimes wonder if there was a reason the 3 of us saw him, and if it was a sign or something. Well, a demon, but perhaps a space-time paradox. You're seeing a man that was in the 1800s. By his recollection, the road probably looked even different. Although, you'd have to ask, was there even a road back then? Perhaps not. Case file number 2368, written by BMFR Research Club. A Flinty situation. My husband loves hunting for fossils and arrowheads. He found his first fully intact Native American artifact a couple years ago. A small scraping tool made from chipped flint. He was super pumped to have finally got one after months of searching. He showed it off to everyone who would listen, and after taking it to work to show some of his coworkers, it just vanished. He thought he must have left it on his truck and drove off with it, because after searching the office and parking lot, it was nowhere. When he told me he'd lost it, I helped him tear the house apart looking for it. We keep our favorite fossils and flint pieces in a small display tray, which is where he normally kept it, and it wasn't there. Not under any furniture, just seemingly gone. Eventually he gave up and just hoped he'd find another one someday soon. Fast forward a year and a half or so, and I was looking in the display tray, and there it was. It just reappeared. From an outside perspective, it's easy to write off, but I know with absolute certainty it was not there before. He and I both combed over the tray many times. For whatever reason, it found its way back, and we still have it to this day. Case file number 2369, written by Juniper Babe. No pets, no people, no logic. This happened 6 months ago, and still bothers me almost every day. I was getting ready to leave the house one day, and I'm using my AirPods. I placed the case on my bed. The bed has dark blue sheets, so I can very easily see the white AirPod case. The bed is made, it's flat. There is no way the case can get lost in the sheets. It's just sitting on top. I am the only person in the room, no pets either. I turn around for literally 1 second to grab my eyeliner, and when I turn back, the case is just gone. I ripped my entire bed apart, even though I know I only saw it sitting right there on top. I looked through every pillow, every blanket. I even went through my drawer and looked through pockets of pants I haven't worn in years because I was so confused and desperate to find it. My bed has storage, so it's completely flat to the ground. There is no under my bed that it could have fallen into, if it could even fall in that 1 second. My entire room was in the hallway when I gave up looking. I have washed my sheets and cleaned my floor many times since then, and I still look to see if I can find them when I do, because it still makes me so mad and confused. It was right there, and then it just vanished from this dimension in 1 second. I didn't believe in any type of glitch before this, and this is one thing that made me question it. It makes absolutely no sense. There is nothing that could have happened in that 1 second for it to not be there when I turned back. I still have the actual AirPods. They're sitting and waiting for their vanished home to come back. I got new ones since then, but I still kept those in case I ever found the case somehow one day, but I never did. They went on a voyage, and I don't think they expected it either. Case file number 2370, written by Been to the High 4, Between the Flowers and the Fog. My great-grandmother lived in a house with her son, my grandfather. She died a month after my second child was born. She was 93 and the sweetest woman. I used to be at her and my grandpa's house a lot as a kid, because I would walk to and from school from there. I remember her funeral and being like the last one to leave her graveside, because I just hated the feeling I had, like we were abandoning her to the cold ground. It was January. Sometimes after death I had a dream. It was the backyard of her house, which at the time was down the street from where me and my husband lived. It was like full foliage in the dream. The dozens of flower beds were in bloom. Grandpa was an avid gardener. And it was summer, but I remember the actual colors in the dream were colorful, but had this muted gray tone to all. Grandma was sitting on a chair in the yard, soft smile, and just her quiet, gentle voice, and beckoned me to sit next to her in the empty chair next to her. I did, and all I remember of the conversation was Grandma assuring me everything would be all right. She tapped my arm and hand over and over, and kept repeating everything was going to be all right. I can still hear her voice in my head. Her voice was so clear. You know how in dreams, voices and faces can almost seem different? I've never dreamt of her since then, and that dream almost didn't feel like a dream. I remember waking up and being overwhelmed by it, and trying to wrap my brain around the dream. I've only ever dreamed like that once since, where it felt more real, different plane of reality. And it was about my dog, Coco, that I lost suddenly in 2016. Like both dreams made me happy, and I felt comfortable and at peace and safe. The house she lived in was in disrepair, and my grandpa, her son, ended up having to leave due to its bad state, and it was bought and demolished. The lot still sits empty, and I pass it all the time, and my husband and I hope whoever owns it will put it back on the market so we can buy it and build a house. My dream since I was a kid was to fix up the old house, but now I just hope one day we can buy it. My grandpa died in 2020, and they are buried next to each other across the street in the cemetery. We used to live in a house that was on the adjacent street. Their graves were behind our property, so I was always able to go over there and visit her when we lived there. Grandpa was still living then. We moved long before Grandpa died. I like to think Grandma maybe had insight to all the troubles and stresses and hopes I've had, past, present, and future. And maybe just was letting me know it'll all come together someday. Don't worry. I visit them now, from time to time, between dropping kids off at school, and just check in, Hope maybe they could give us some luck so the lot goes on sale, so I can build a house she would be proud of. Case file number 2371, written by Bird Frog Frog. The Shuffling of the Unknown. When I was 10, we moved to a new house in the country. A cozy, homey place, very comfortable. When I think of home, I think of it. I often miss it, and I like to imagine I will go back and buy it someday. Millennial nonsense. That said, it was the oddest damn house. From what I understand, it had started life in a nearby town, and then was physically moved about 6 miles out. Someone then tacked on about 25% more house. I think the family who lived there before us did the work. I'm told it was some creative do-it-yourself. Anyway, they tacked on a new master bedroom and bath and extended the living room. Then, an enclosed, screened-in back porch. My parents got the new master. My sister and I got the original master, behind which was this newer porch add-on. I have no idea why they added that porch, because it made our room dark all of the time. The moon had to be large enough, and set or rise at just the right times, for us to get light in there at night. A whole year passes very happily. We like the house. But sometimes, about 30 minutes to an hour after my sister and I turned the light off in our room, something would start bumping in the attic. Big thump, thump, thumps, like someone with 2 peg legs stamping around in circles. My sister and I called this the thump bumps. We'd make up whole stories about them. Honestly, I think if my unexplained experiences had remained this simple, I would have chalked it up as rats, which we definitely had. The thing is, I've since dealt with rats, both wild and tame, and while it's not impossible for them to make such sounds, why constant circles? Why did it sound so heavy? If it were that heavy, you'd think that rat was jumping, and if it were jumping, you'd hear the answering slap of its tail. Also, rats have their own little lives to run. They're not automata. They take enormous bodily leaps in circles and circles in a steady rhythmic pattern for 2 to 3 hours at a time? But whatever, we weren't afraid. It was odd, not bad. Early summer rolls in. I have turned 11. I woke up suddenly one night. I heard someone doing dishes, running water, dishes clinking against one another. Normally, I would have seen some light on in the corridor wall, but it was black as sin, which meant someone was doing dishes in the dark. I glanced at my clock, 2 a.m. Okay. Well, I was thirsty, so I got up. Just as I reached the end of the hall, just as I turned the corner to the living room, the sound just cut off, like someone had hit stop on a tape player. There was no squeak of the faucet handle being twisted, or the stream slowing to a trickle, or dishes being set down. The sound halted mid-splash, mid-clink. Complete silence. Nervous now, but committed, I slinked into the kitchen. The sink was bone dry and everything clean. Why shouldn't it have been when we had finished all the dishes the night before? I still have a clear memory of the moonlight glinting off the faucet. I didn't know what to think of it, but nothing seemed awry. I drank my water and went to bed. I don't know how long passed, only that it was summer and Sunday. That morning, I had been playing with my toy dinosaurs, of which I had 5. Velociraptor, Iguanodon, Brachiosaurus, Styracosaurus, and I forget the last one, but it was a herbivore. I had lined them up on my bed very neatly before heading off to church. I was last out of the house because my dinosaurs were important business. Well, when we finally returned, my parents unlocked the door and in we tramped. Brother first, who turned into his room ahead of me, and me second. I stopped right in the doorway and I felt real fear for the first time. My dinosaurs were no longer lined up on my bed, but scattered across it, like they had been played with. One was lying under the bed, one was lying halfway under my pillow, one was lying at the foot of the bed. Worst of all, my Velociraptor had been jammed together with the Iguanodon, like they were locked in battle. This one bothers me a lot because it's scary, no matter how I interpret it. If it wasn't spirit shenanigans, it was human shenanigans. My family might have done it, but whom? Dad was unimaginative. Mom was busy. And although my sister or brother would be excellent suspects, I'd been last out of the house, precisely because I had spent time lining up the dinosaurs. I think I asked my sister if she had done anything and she said no. Also, the style of play counts out the animal members of the family. To get that iguanodon into my velociraptor's arms would have necessitated a great deal of shoving and twisting. We had a Labrador retriever and many barn cats, but all of them were outside. If not my family, this implies that a stranger broke into the house, only played with my dinosaurs, and then left without doing anything else, which frankly is also terrible. In fact, there is nothing scarier than a human being. You know, I agree. And I'd prefer ghosts to them any day, but I guess I'm getting off topic now. So I'm seriously unnerved by this point. I start connecting dots and I don't like what they suggest. I put my dinosaurs away and tell no one. Well, not long after, I wake up in the middle of the night. It is unbelievably dark in this room, but that's normal. I was very cozy, deliciously rested, safe and snug. One problem. My left arm was sticking up out of the covers at an awkward angle, like I was trying to slap the ceiling. It was actually uncomfortable, but I was so relaxed that I didn't want to move, even to put my arm down. Suddenly, a warm adult hand presses down against mine. It drags down against my palm. The ball of their hand catches on the ball of mine. The skin is rough and moist. I can feel all the fingers. It drags off and flops away. It was like being high-fived by a zombie. I jerked my hand under the covers. I am now wide awake. I stare into the inky black and I listen intently. I realize that I can't hear my sister breathing. I can't hear anything. Oh God, I wanted to hear something, anything. I lie there, not daring to move a muscle, straining my eyes and ears. I was certain there was a person there in the darkness, but I couldn't hear them at all. I was sure they'd speak. They'd have to speak, right? You don't high-five strangers in the night and then not talk about it, right? I don't know how long I waited, but eventually I slept. And when I woke up the next morning, I didn't say anything about it to anyone. I listened to everyone at the breakfast table, and nobody mentioned coming into my room or seeing weird strangers in the night. I honestly didn't know what to think about it. I had been wide awake, I knew it. A sleepwalker, perhaps, maybe my sister, my mother. But no one was a sleepwalker that I knew about. I decided to put it behind me. Again, I told no one. That very night, I wake up again, wide awake. There's a little bit of moonlight, but thanks to that goddamn porch, it's a mere sliver on the windowsill behind me. It spent all of its strength just getting there. It can illuminate nothing. And this time, I felt like I was waiting. I tried not to wait. I told myself I woke up in the middle of the night all of the time. I was absolutely not going to give any more high fives to night people. I had my arms under the covers and everything. A few minutes later, I hear my brother shuffle out of his room. I immediately got relaxed. Oh, thank God, just bro. He was probably going to the bathroom. Instead of walking to the bathroom, which was right across from his room, he shuffled to the end of the hall. Okay, so he's getting a drink. Fair enough. But then, he turned around at the end of the hall and shuffled back. Alarm bells started jangling in the pit of my stomach. I froze in place and listened. He reached the door to my room, then turned around and shuffled back to the end of the hallway. Then turned around, shuffled back towards my door. He did this about 4 or 5 times, and I was getting increasingly more concerned. Finally, I sat up in bed. The shuffling had reached my door once more. I could see nothing. "Sam!" I asked. "Are you okay?" Complete and utter silence followed. My heart started crawling up into my throat. Please, say something, come on, say anything. Then the shuffling began again, at the other end of the hallway. I fly under the covers, which is where I lie for hours, while a barefoot ghost shuffles back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. My door is open. It can come in. It can see me. Oh my God. But you know what's wild? I fell asleep. All it was doing was shuffling. The sound became tiresome, and I was tired. I guess shuffling isn't that bad. Better than non-consensual high fives, for sure. The next morning, I am again left with a conundrum. Do I tell someone? What the hell does one say about something like this? And what did I expect anyone to do about it? The thing could teleport. Its ability to do dishes transcended time and space. I didn't know what it wanted. I didn't even know what it was. I wasn't sure I could trust my experience. It was just so goddamn weird. For the record, my family was one step above Christian fundamentalism. Southern evangelicals believe in a spirit world of black and whites. Either a spirit is God's or it's the devil's. There is no middle ground. They also don't tend to believe that ghosts are turned dead, but actors of spiritual anarchy, there to confuse the faithful and lead them astray. Well, I was an extremely devout child. I'd read a lot about devils. They came in groups. They were destructive. They caused mayhem. They were almost unimaginably wicked. My spirit thing had exercised in the hallway and high-fived me. So not sure how to categorize that. Again, I opted to say nothing. I was hyper-alert when I was in the house, but it was normal and comfortable in the daytime. I decided tonight was going to be better. I prayed. I read my Bible. I woke up that night, wide awake. This time, there was no waiting. Shuffling started at the far end of the hallway. It walked up to my door, and it did not stop. It walked into my room. My bedroom's floor plan was like so. Sister's bed towards the inside of the room, and my bed sat in front of the hallway. There was an E-shaped walking space, and my shuffle buddy was like, hell yeah, I love to shuffle in pathways shaped like a capital E. Let's see how many circuits I can make of this bad boy. It was summer, and I had thrown off everything but a single thin sheet. This creepy freaking bastard started poking me through the sheet. It poked the sides of my arms and legs and hips. It had a lot of fingers, but generally, it would poke me on the side it was walking. Also, the fingers were preternaturally small. I kept hoping I was imagining it. Maybe it was the fan. Let it be the fan just whiffing on the sheets. And the ghost must have laughed out loud, probably. Did I fall asleep this time? Absolutely freaking not. I lay there absolutely still, barely daring to breathe, for I don't know how long I kept hoping my sister would get up. Eventually, the room started lightening. Dawn was coming. I started straining my eyes again. Soon it would grow light enough for me to see my tormentor. The shuffling stopped at the head of my bed. I heard 3 drawn-out sighs in a woman's voice. Each one was identical to the one before, like a recording being played. And just like that, it was gone. I launched out of bed like it was Cape Canaveral. To my surprise, my sister followed me immediately. I was angry at first, like, you mean you didn't do anything? She was 9. I don't know what I thought she was going to do. I threw myself into my mom's bed and started babbling about ghosts. There was a ghost in my room. It was walking around my bed, and it was touching me, and it sighed, and it high-fived me. And why wasn't my mom looking concerned? Why did she look crabby? Bird, frog, please stop, Mom said. You're going to scare your sister. I frantically turned to my sister. She stared at me blankly and said nothing. I realized she must have jumped out of bed because I had disturbed her, not because a ghost had woken her up. This was beside the fact. My mother didn't believe me. I hate to tell you all this, but I would routinely lie as a child. I'm not talking about mundane activities like whether I had cleaned my room or finished homework. I'm talking about, today I saw a dragon while I was riding the bus, or I found a magical pool full of fairies. The only thing worse than being disbelieved by my own mother was the realization that I had played myself. I was the boy who cried wolf, but instead of wolves, it was Shuffles and chore ghosts. I was on my own. So that night I prayed before I went to bed, and I threw on my comforter even though I was uncomfortably warm. When I woke up, suddenly that night, right on the dot, I woke up afraid and mad, like let's throw hands, jerk. If Mom wasn't going to help me, I was going to help myself. Right on schedule, the thing shuffles from the end of the hallway into the room and begins shuffling. Moonlight is starting to pool on the floor, but it's not illuminating, and the ghost isn't getting very close to it. Thankfully, no more poking. Shuffles had only gotten 3/4 of the way into the cycle when I leapt out of bed. I ball my hands into fists. I stand straight, throw my shoulders back. This was great and everything, but this was as far as I'd planned. Also, I was 11 years old. Nobody is afraid of babies, except for smaller babies. The ghost stopped. I could feel it regarding me from a corner. It felt so apathetic, like it didn't really care, but go off, I guess. I groped around for something to say and pulled off the verbal equivalent of the housewife who starts throwing flower pots and ballpoint pens at a home intruder. "You'd better not hurt my sister," I said loudly, hoping my sister would wake up. She did not. Silence followed. I stood there, feeling dumber by the second. Was I going to try and fistfight a ghost who could teleport? After a couple of minutes, I lay back down, and just like that, Shuffles started walking again. I spent the rest of the night wide awake and in despair. Again, as the dawn light began to fill the room, and just before I could see anything, the ghost sighed 3 times, each time identical, and was gone. Again, I sprang out of my bed and marched to my parents' room. My dad had come home the night before. He often worked at faraway locations for weeks at a time. So as I tried to tell Mom what had happened, he leaned up on an elbow and listened. He believed me. Mom tried to tell him I told stories like that all the time. I don't remember the exact gist of the conversation, but he prayed with me, and I felt better. That night was Wednesday night church. Dad put in a prayer request for me and sang a special song he'd selected that mirrored my fears. I felt so seen and so cared for. And that night, he prayed over my doorway, asking God to put an angel there. He also told me to say if the ghost showed up. I went to sleep elated. I woke up that night again. This time I was buzzing with excitement. Was I about to see a ghost fight an angel? The shuffling started at the end of the hallway. It drew closer and closer. I was so afraid that I might have to face the ghost myself. I waited for any sign that the prayer had worked. Shuffles shuffled straight through the door. Didn't even hesitate. Shuffled right beside the bed. This time, the moonlight fell far enough that I should have seen something walking, pressing into the carpet at least, right? But I could see nothing at all. My heart sank. I sat up anyway. Shuffle stopped right beside me. I could feel it regarding me. "In the name of Jesus," I said, "get out of this house and never come back." Huge, pregnant silence. Then, ha! One long woman's sigh. Almost comical. Identical to all the ones before. And just like that, it was gone. I was able to sleep the rest of the night, and the next morning I raced up to Dad and gave him a huge hug, and told him it had worked. Now, I've got to interject a note here. I am no longer an evangelical, but an atheist. This one experience kept me religious longer than I might have been otherwise, but also the seed of some doubt and thought. Because like a bad horror movie, it didn't end. Early fall, about 6 in the afternoon, I was sitting in my brother's room, reading a racist primer from the 50s, as one does. I started to feel uncomfortable. I felt like I was being watched, and I couldn't pay attention to the text. My eyes kept sliding over the words. I wanted to get up and leave, but when I really thought about it, I got a bit tetchy. No, I thought. There is absolutely no reason to leave. I won't. Started just staring at the page, doing no reading at all, as the uncomfortable feeling grew and grew and grew. Then from the door, ha! This time it was a man's, but like the woman's sigh, just pitched down. I flung the book and sprang. When I hit the doorway, I passed through a heavy coldness, hit the hallway. I realized the hallway was downright hot compared to the room, probably a difference of 15 to 20 degrees. What's more, passing through that coldness was like stepping through a door. As I walked into the living room, I marveled. Dad was watching Wheel of Fortune turned way up. Bro was on the computer. Mom and sister were cooking and conversing loudly. When I had been in that room, I hadn't heard anything. It had been completely silent externally. After that, all obviously weird activity dropped off precipitously. It didn't end, though. A number of small, bizarre things followed me into the mid-20s. At one point, I had a customer tell me that I had an angel, and I said, no thanks. I have my theories, but that's all they are. Mostly I want nothing to do with it. I ain't going into no haunted houses, y'all. I don't trust something that can look or sound like anything it wants. I can't understand their motivations, and that alone is reason to stay far, far away. So I became an atheist. I was able to explain a lot of nonsense I had thought was miraculous as a child. I haven't been able to explain this, and honestly, I'm kind of grateful. Keeps me humble. I feel like it was truly a rare experience. Well, I just want to say this was a pleasure to narrate. Great writing, and what a crazy experience to go through. Also, curious that this experience, at least in form, shaped you into an atheist. I mean, per your description of Southern evangelicals and what they believe, it makes sense. I mean, this ghost doesn't align with those beliefs, not really. Now, I'm agnostic. I just say, I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. Things you can't quite explain that the scientific method can't test because it's not repeatable. Although your experience with Shuffles the Ghost, let's call him, could be tested because he kept repeating. Although I guess the question then is, would it know it was being observed and being recorded, tested? Even if you couldn't see him, if he wasn't materialized in form, he was still making noise, so you could have recorded that. But yeah, what is a ghost? What is Shuffles the Ghost? Is it a remnant of someone who passed there? Just a part of their soul, a fragment, which is my inclination, especially when they repeat. They're stuck in a loop. But this one seemed to have more of a spark to it, like it could feedback off of you and was more sentient and aware, changing its tune in the sigh or the ha. So I can't give you definitive answers, but it is perhaps better that way. Life is more interesting with mystery. Now time for the jokes of the day. My wife yelled from upstairs, "Honey, do you ever get a shooting pain across your body, like somebody has a voodoo doll of you and they're stabbing it?" I replied, no. How about now? I always wondered if those worked. I don't think they do, but just the intent is what matters right now. Trump is selling a gold card that quickly gets you citizenship. I heard they're thinking of calling it the American Express Gold Card. I guess that fits. My wife convinced me to get orthopedic insoles. I thought it was a dumb idea at first. I stand corrected. My doctor told me I had a very good prostate. I was deeply touched. Way too deep. My friend named his dogs Rolex and Timex. They are his watchdogs. Nice. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony, signing off.